A girl named Luna is walking around practicing her tour guide speech. She is the owner of a maritime museum, a legacy that was left to her by her father. But now, it is facing a downhill because of a tremendous lack of publicity and little to no tourists. She is frustrated that no one is eager to learn about marine facts and explore the history behind lighthouses, famous sailboats, or the oceans. Her assistant, Joanne, wants to look at other options to generate income and pay their utility bills. She comes up with the bright idea of leasing the museum to house events, and Luna gets excited thinking that she could call the famous historian, Imogen Heron, to give a speech there, but Joanne believes otherwise. Her direction was towards the museum's display of maritime artifacts that would give just the correct aesthetic value for wedding events. Luna is worried that people would forget the actual function of the place and be careless with the exhibits. Besides, who would want to hold a wedding function at a maritime museum, except for a few history buffs like her? Joanne's ears prick up at this new piece of information. Did Luna just admit a wish to get married? Luna immediately denies this but finally yields to using the place to hold weddings. With, of course, strict rules and regulations on what people could touch and what not. With the decision made, they both get to work on their newest scheme to save the building. On the other side of town, we are introduced to Jackson Valentine, the rich son of an affluent CEO. He is sneaking back into his father's office building in order to convince his sister on helping him achieve the upcoming board seat. That way, he could have the status and authority to fund environmentally friendly projects, like Ocean Can, a company which helped clean oceans with the help of technology. His persuasion works on his sister and she agrees to help him influence the direction of their father's company. Meanwhile, Joanne is holding a photo shoot near the docking harbor. She has decided to advertise the museum with Luna's pictures in a wedding dress. As Joanne takes photos, she is spotted by our male bachelor, Jackson, who presumes that she is part of the paparazzi, and immediately confronts her. He ends up deleting the photos on her camera before Luna finally appears, and Jackson realizes how mistaken he was. He apologizes for intruding in their photo shoot and informs her about his mission with Ocean Can. He doesn't want the press to jeopardize the momentum of his boat before it even sets sail. As if to persuade her of just how motivated he was, he begins to give stats on how Americans dump a garbage truck's worth of plastic every minute in the ocean, and looks condescendingly at her for holding a water bottle. Luna doesn't take kindly to his patronization, being an ocean nerd herself, and curtly explains her status as an owner of a maritime museum. They both end things with each other awkwardly. What they don't know is that Joanne had taken a couple of shots of the two of them, looking very much like a couple. She later reveals to Luna who Jackson Valentine was. He was well known for undertaking philanthropic activities such as excavating home foundations in Sri Lanka and saving sloths in Costa Rica, among other things. Not to add that he valued intelligence above attractiveness. Joanne shows her the couple photo she had shot of the two of them earlier, but Luna stares at it with disgust. All she can remember is how he condescendingly advised her to modify her behavior to reduce pollution. There was no way she wanted to further involve herself with that jerk. But the universe has other plans for her. Instead of uploading the pictures she took of Luna, Joanne sends the wedding shot of Luna and Jackson Valentine to their publicity list by mistake. Now everyone in the media, including Nolan Elias, one of the top journalists in the country, was going to be on a mission to acquire a tip on this newest story. Luna and Joanne try their best to salvage the situation. If they could call every person on the list and tell them the news was fake, surely they'd listen. Yet, the news of Jackson Valentine marrying Luna was already making headlines. Heck, people were sending flowers to congratulate her, and cameras had followed Luna all the way to the museum. Everything had gotten out of hand. There was nothing to do except to meet up with Jackson Valentine and explain what was up. The two drive their way over to his mansion and somehow manage to convince Jackson's assistant to meet up with them. They are led to sit in his bourgeois living room, and lo behold, Jackson Valentine comes walking in. A surprisingly chill Jackson Valentine, who immediately assumes that Luna must be the manager of the environment project he was partnering up with. Confused, Luna finally brings up the topic of the false engagement, and that finally clears the air. They ask him to retract the news of the engagement through his publicity, and Jackson readily agrees, thinking the whole situation was way too frivolous anyways. This rubs Luna off the wrong way and she leaves, remarking how arrogant he was. Later, when Luna receives a voice message from the topmost journalist to meet up and talk about her upcoming wedding, they know that things haven't quieted down as they'd expected. Meanwhile, Jackson is facing issues with the project, as his father has refused to support his Save the Environment endeavors. According to his sister, Jackson had never demonstrated any interest in running the company, and it would take something of a PR miracle to impress their father. This gives him an idea and he runs out to meet Luna. Luna is busy trying to convince Nolan to run an article about the museum, but the journalist is only interested in the upcoming wedding. He thinks that Luna is being devious and trying to hide the story. Right on cue, Jackson's car pulls up behind. Animatedly, he puts an arm around Luna's waist and tells the journalist that they were looking very much forward to their wedding. Luna cannot believe what she's hearing, so she brings Jackson inside and asks him what's going on. Jackson explains that this was the best thing they could do to achieve their goals. He could save his image in front of his dad as someone seriously planning to settle down, and she would have endless publicity for her museum. After Nolan's article is published, they could stage a public breakup and things would go back to the way they were. Only her museum would be famous, and he would have his image fixed. Luna grudgingly agrees to his plan. While talking to Nolan, Luna's mother pulls up and is shocked to hear that her only daughter is getting married. She complains bitterly about being kept in the dark until Jackson finally swoops in and tells her that they were waiting till lobster night to break the news to both their parents. Successfully managing to sedate her, Luna now worries about this unexpected lobster night with Jackson's parents. Will they manage to keep up this whole farce in front of them? Jackson takes Luna out to buy an engagement ring. On the way, they decide on some facts about their relationship and what they'll be telling others. At the jewelry store, they meet up with Dominic, who was dating Luna's mother. Dominic tells them that her mother wants to give her something in private. This thing turns out to be the mother's engagement ring. With Luna's father's death, there was no point in keeping it, and she knew Luna would love to have it instead. Luna is exasperated that things were going way too out of hand. All she wanted was some publicity for her museum, and now she was being handed her mother's engagement ring. What next? She tries to tell her mother that their engagement was a scam. But her mother doesn't listen and slips the ring on her daughter's finger. Later, Luna shows Jackson the museum office and tells him about how the village set up a preservation society to preserve the marine history of the land. That preservation society soon transformed into what her father's museum was today. She excitedly shows him old documents dating centuries old now converted into microfiche, and tells him she could do this forever. Jackson jokes about it, but Luna is serious about him wanting to know her passions. This prompts him to take her to the dock so that she would understand something about his passion. He takes a garbage can from the ocean and the two start separating the plastic while he explains to her how he never originally liked the fame that came with being a Valentine. He wanted others to see him for who he was, a person who wanted to do something meaningful. And that made him realize he could use his fame as a commodity to achieve the more meaningful things he so wanted to pursue. People were too busy being intrigued by him when there was a pretty woman around. Luna asks him why he had never settled down, and Jackson revealed that he just hadn't found the right one. This prompts him to ask what was up with her life, and Luna reveals her dad died 3 years ago. His death had made her not want to settle down with anyone because the pain would shatter her heart if something didn't work out between them. Surprised that things went so deep, Jackson calls his sister later and asks her to get the whole family together on lobster night. He had something on his mind that he wanted to share. The next day, Jackson brings Luna and her family to his family house, where they meet his parents, Victor and Camille Valentine. His parents warmly greet them, and Jackson takes the opportunity to introduce Luna as his fiancée. A shockwave goes through his family, who suddenly stand rigid and cannot think of anything except to awkwardly congratulate them both. They soon settle down for lunch and raise a toast. Jackson remarks how his father must have never expected this day to come, and his father looks like he has something to say but is cut off by Jackson's mother. The conversation soon turns towards the old lighthouse that was demolished from the village. Luna remarks how her father would cast a light every month from the mark where it used to stand, to pay tribute to the way lighthouses guided ships home. Jackson's father, Victor, is intrigued and talks about wreckers who'd fake a fire and loot unsuspecting ships that docked on the beach, thinking the light was coming from a lighthouse. Luna is surprised at his knowledge, and he reveals that he also contributed to the Preservation Society and had done everything he could to stop the lighthouse from being demolished. Jackson's mother, Camille, pipes in and promises to hand Luna some rare postcards of their local land as an engagement gift that she could exhibit in her museum. But this only serves to make her awkward, and she wants to leave. Jackson's sister, Posey, tries to stop Luna, but Jackson mitigates the situation by telling a fabricated story about how he had asked for Luna's hand in marriage using a clamshell. He appoints Posey as the maid of honor so that she could know the rest of the details from Luna. Later, Luna discusses Jackson's fractured relationship with his parents and thinks he's spoiled for complaining about them, but Joanne is clearly not listening. She finds it rather sad that Luna would consider Jackson's sister over her to be the maid of honor, which makes Luna laugh. She tells her not to be ridiculous as it is just a fake wedding and assures her that she would be her first choice at her real wedding. Joanne suddenly spots Posey entering the museum and ushers Luna to go meet up with her. Posey is skeptical about their relationship, and her suspicions grow when Luna tries to describe their common interests, especially a shared love for family, which Posey doesn't believe for a second. This encounter has Luna a bit jittery as well, and she asks Jackson to be more serious about sharing important information with her. Jackson wants to know where she is taking him, and Luna leads him to her dad's boat. She explains to him how her father always found value in things that people were eager to forget and abandon. This boat was important to him, and for that reason, she always took some time to fix it up little by little. All this time, Jackson had been listening to her, rather touched by her love for her deceased father, and the two got to work cleaning the boat, If either of them had any reservations, they were blown away by just how well they got along together. Even in that short while, cleaning the boat, they laugh, talk, and tease each other. However, the happy lie they've created together starts to show cracks when Luna's mother proposes that she wants to throw them a proper engagement party. Luna and Jackson try to politely turn her down, but Dominic insists that they accept it considering Luna was her only child. Later, the two of them wonder how long they can keep deceiving people. It was one thing to just have their parents involved and let the whole thing blow over after a fake breakup. But it was an entirely different thing to have family relatives and friends come over and celebrate a lie. Luna wants to tell her mother the truth, but Jackson holds her back. He thinks that the engagement party would just make their story more believable, and they just had to keep the deception up till the news article gets published. Revealing the lie to Luna's parents might make them act off around other people, so it was only fair to not let anyone know until everything was over, even if they had to fabricate more lies. Grudgingly, Luna has to agree with the argument. But while choosing the catering menu, she still tries to make her mother see them for what they are, not a real couple. But the mother just shushes her up. She acknowledges Luna's smartness but doesn't want her daughter's insecurities to push her happiness away. She just wanted Luna to follow her heart rather than her mind. And Luna just can't bring herself to say anything further. Later, she meets up with Jackson to talk about Nolan's interview style. Instead, they discover that not only was Jackson's father part of the Preservation Society, but had also largely funded it. While Luna looks for documents to verify this information, Jackson discovers a letter from Luna's father. According to Luna, her father had hidden them all over the museum for her to find, so that she could have his words even after his death. She has discovered them all and had decided to keep them exactly where she found them, just so the magic was never really over. Jackson is touched by the love Luna's father had for her, and he decides to go on a scavenger hunt with her around the museum. They look underneath a seashell, behind a wall frame, in an old diving helmet, and among other places to unearth all the letters her father had left behind. Once they discover the last letter, Luna expresses her wish to one day find just one more letter while least expecting it. Later, Jackson decides to have a heart-to-heart talk with his father. He offers him the news item on his dad's funding of the Preservation Society. Back then, his father would even support projects that weren't profitable to the family company, so why couldn't he trust his own son to do the same thing? His father tries to dismiss this frivolous talk, but Jackson doesn't back down. He reminds his father of a story many years back when he had carried a tired and crying Jackson on his shoulders up the lighthouse stairs, even when his toddler mind had not believed in himself. So why couldn't his father support him today, when he really needed it? Jackson leaves his father alone, pondering heavily upon his statements. With Jackson showing a new side to himself, Posey, his sister, decides to surprise Luna to show her support. She blindfolds Luna and leads her to her favorite writer, Imogen Heron. Luna is almost too ecstatic to stand straight, and when she learns that the two of them have read her book on their local history and were keen to publish it, this was more than she could handle. But guilt tugs at her heart, and she reveals to Joanne later how she had to reluctantly turn down the offer. It wasn't fair that Jackson's family was willing to show so much love for her when their relationship wasn't even real to begin with. Later, Jackson and Luna walk over to the tribute point of the old lighthouse. During their walk, Jackson informs her what he had learned about Luna in the past few days. Luna was a Taurus, born in April 1989. She was a real smarty pants, no surprise there, and had been the captain of the field hockey team. In college, she had traded hockey for history and preferred staying in rather than going out. Her favorite fantastical dinner would include Imogen Heron among other famous people. Luna teasingly grades him a silver instead of a gold star for revealing to his sister about her book. However, Jackson insists that her writing could help save the museum. He is sure she has more talent than Imogen Heron and has plenty of ideas about how she could go about finishing the last chapter, but Luna doesn't want him to meddle with her private affairs. They both admire the view where the demolished lighthouse used to stand, and Jackson brings out a seashell. He goes down on his knees and makes a fake proposal so that Luna has something honest to talk about when it comes to their relationship. While Luna worries about the overdue utility bills of the museum, Jackson's father is gradually accepting his son and Luna's relationship. It isn't long before the engagement party is just around the corner. Luna's mother wants Luna to try on a wedding dress Joanne had found for her, and after much insistence, Luna grudgingly agrees. When she steps out of the closet, the pair gasp upon seeing her. The beautiful satin dress appreciatively hugs Luna's body, and has just the right amount of sequins to bring Luna's simple and sophisticated style. Her mother tearfully wonders what Luna's father would have said upon seeing his daughter now. But that statement causes Luna more hurt than anyone could have anticipated. If her father had been alive, she could not imagine having to play this farce and make a mockery of her own wedding. She abandons Joanne and her mother and gazes tearfully at herself in the mirror. Meanwhile, Jackson's father apologizes to his son. He can finally see that Jackson is not trying to take advantage through a fabricated lie, and has more to offer than what he had given him credit on. Awkwardly, Jackson expresses his gratitude and hurriedly leaves, his mind burdened by guilt. A day before the party, Luna and Jackson discuss what could have been the moment in their relationship, when they both decided to take it beyond just dating, To his surprise, Luna reveals that when she actually got a peek at the kind of person he was, and how much he cared about things that mattered to him, those moments would have convinced her. She turns the question on Jackson, but he promises to give her a proper answer at the engagement party. They finally have the interview with Nolan, and take him through all the details about how and where their relationship started. Surprisingly, it is much easier to convince Nolan about their conviction towards one another, and all goes surprisingly well to the point that Jackson even invites the journalist to their engagement party. Nolan leaves, but not before reminding Luna how much forward he looked to her writing. Jackson nudges her as if to say, "I told you so," and the pair laugh knowing they had nailed the interview. Later, the two tease each other at how convincing they had managed to make their relationship sound. Luna tells him that their hard work with notes and memorizing facts finally paid off, but Jackson looks unconvinced. Seeing how easily the two of them had gotten along in just a week, he thinks that a part of the interview had been real and had not been an act. Suddenly he wonders out loud how they should stage the breakup, and the two reluctantly come up with a plan. Jackson could pretend that he never gave much importance to all the things Luna found important, and then Luna would pretend to get a reality check after seeing the article written by the journalist. Things would fall out between them, as simple as that. But despite their convictions, it is obvious that neither of the two wants to go through with that plan, something that Luna later reveals to Joanne. She doesn't have the heart to keep up with the lie anymore. Joanne suspects that Luna is in love, and holds herself accountable for trying to convince Luna to go with the engagement plan. But Luna pulls herself together. She tells Joanne that she willingly acted out a lie to save the museum, and she was still willing to go further. Meanwhile, Jackson cannot keep up with the lie anymore. When Posey comes to check on him, he tells her about how he had asked Luna to pretend to be his fiancée just to sway his father's vote. This immediately doesn't sit down with Posey. She cannot believe he'd go so far as to manipulate the entire family into thinking he was a family man. Jackson can finally see how wrong he was. He can finally see that he hadn't been willing to do the right thing, and decides to win his dad's favor more honestly. Posey knows sincere conviction when she encountered it, and this time, she readily believes Jackson's word. The only problem was, what was he going to do about his feelings towards Luna? At the engagement party, Luna walks in looking beautiful in a red dress. But she's worried and knows how much she would hate herself for disappointing others when all they wanted was for Jackson and her to be happy. Jackson feels the same, but when he tries to convince her about how sincere they were towards one another, Luna thinks he's just trying to save his image. She walks in and grabs everybody's attention by tapping on a champagne glass. With everyone looking at her, she reveals how Jackson and she had fabricated the entire engagement plan to save the museum. Everyone looks scandalized, and Luna's mother walks out unable to stand the lies anymore. Tearfully, Luna abandons the party and sits by one of the ship's docks where she hears Posey and Jackson in a heated argument. Posey reveals that even if he had tried to reveal his true feelings to Luna, it wasn't exactly ideal to readily forgive someone who had just wanted a position on the company board. Luna walks in on their conversation and accuses Jackson of leading her on. Outraged, Jackson accuses her of doing the same thing. But Luna thinks her personal gain was at least morally superior to his. She was just trying to save her father's museum, while he was trying to win a lowly position on a board. She walks out on him, leaving Jackson and his sister alone on the docks. Back at the museum, she finds out that the utility companies are threatening to take her to court if she doesn't pay the bills. Helpless, she cradles herself on the museum floor and reads her father's letters. Days pass by, and Luna wishes she had her father's guidance to lend her support. One day, Dominic turns up at the museum. He hugs her and expresses his wish to know her better, just enough to lend her support whenever she needs it. Encouraged by his warmth, she finally brings up the courage to meet her mother after days of avoiding her. When her mother sees her, she starts reciting the list of things on the menu, but Luna stops her. She asks her why they couldn't have a normal conversation just like any regular mother and daughter. This is frustrating for her mother, who reveals that talking to Luna was like talking to a wall. If she tried talking about her father, or Dominic, Luna would immediately close the subject, so the only thing left to talk about was food. This makes Luna realize just how much she had been shutting her mother out. Her mother had just wanted to go back to the way they were, and she had made it unreasonably hard for her every step of the way. Emotionally, Luna's mother reveals that she had been wanting to get married to Dominic, but they had been postponing it for a year, wanting Luna on board. Luna immediately gives her mother her blessing and explains how sincerely happy she was for her. She doesn't want to be in her mother's way of happiness any longer and apologizes for keeping her in the dark about the museum's financial situation and her lies about the engagement and being in love. Luna's mother smiles and says she doesn't believe for a second that Luna wasn't in love. She then brings Luna to the museum where, inside a secret spot, was another letter lying undiscovered. Luna's mother explains that it was supposed to be read when Luna walked down the aisle. In the letter, her father, amongst many other things, expresses his wish for Luna to marry a guy who brought out the best in her, someone who gave importance to what she held important. He wanted her to spend every day happily and do the things that made her grateful to be alive. After reading her father's letter, Luna and her mom hug one another. Later, Luna meets up with Posey and the two decide to give Jackson a surprise by publishing her book, dedicating it to Jackson and his love for the ocean. Luna also decides to hand over the museum to Joanne, because if her father wanted her to be happy, then she needed all the time she could get to go back to her favorite hobby, writing. Meanwhile, Posey encourages Jackson to call Luna and meet up with her. Jackson is afraid that everyone hates him. Heck, the journalist wouldn't even write about him anymore, but Posey reminds him of his promise to her that he'd always do what was right. Knowing she was right, he decides to talk to his father again. He explained that he was going to give up the board seat and actively pursue all the small projects he'd come to love and support. To his surprise, he finds his father cordial and open to his ideas. His father encourages Jackson to let go of his ambitions at times just so that he could pursue what was important. Jackson thinks his father is referring to all the ocean cleaning companies, but his father reveals he was referring to Luna. At Luna's book event, Posey introduces Luna's book to the public, and Luna's favorite author, Imogen Heron, steps in to give Luna her support. Finally, it is Luna's turn and she gives a speech about how balancing the past with the present was important so that one didn't miss out on the important things in front of them. As she's saying those words, a light keeps blinking her, and suddenly she realizes she knows that Jackson was outside. She leaves the podium and races out to meet him. They both face one another and Luna asks the moment he knew she was the one. Funnily, Jackson replies that it was when Luna cried over microfiche, and Luna admits that for her it was when he proposed holding a clamshell. Finally, they both reach for a kiss and the movie ends.